Hey guys, I wanted to take a few minutes and go through this notes set on counting atoms. So some of this we already know. Let's see if I can, there we go. Like we've already discussed before what a chemical formula is. So a chemical formula shows us a molecule, and it uses the element symbols and numbers to show us how many atoms there are of each element. So, for example, when we have H2O or CO2, that tells us what elements are in the molecule and how many of each of them there are. So we're going to learn how to count the atoms in a molecule. So the first thing we need to talk about are the chemical symbols. And like I said, we've talked about this before. So elements are represented either by one or two letters, symbols. The first letter of the element is always a capital, and the second letter will always be lowercase. And that's how we know where one element starts and another one ends. So sodium is capital N, lowercase a. Carbon is capital C. Chlorine is capital C, lowercase l. The next thing we need to talk about are these subscripts, like when we look at H2O. So this little 2 here tells us that there are that many atoms there. So the subscript tells us the number of atoms of a particular element and only refers to the element that it is behind. If there's no subscript, that means that there's just one of them. So here I have Ca, but there's no subscript after it. So that means that there's just one calcium atom. Here I have a subscript 2, and that subscript just goes with my chlorine, and that tells me that there's 2 chlorine atoms. The next number that we're going to talk about is a coefficient, and just like if you've learned about coefficients in math class, it's the number that's placed in front of a chemical formula. And so you must multiply the coefficient by the subscript to find out the number of atoms in each element. So here we have 2 that goes with our oxygen, but we also have a 4 here. So to figure out how many oxygen atoms we have to do 2 times 4, and that'll tell us that there's 8. Carbon has no subscript, so that would be 4 times 1, and would give us 4 atoms. Another way that you can think about this is by drawing the molecules. So if I want to use orange for carbon and green for oxygen, if I ignore the coefficient for right now and I just look at my molecule, CO2 means that I have 1 carbon atom and 2 oxygen atoms that make up that molecule. But if I have 4 of them, that means that I have to have 4 of these molecules. So this was 1, 2, 3, 4. And each molecule is going to be the same. So it's going to have 1 carbon and 2 oxygens. And then I can go through and I can count these if I want to. 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 oxygens. And that's just another way to think about it if you don't like doing the actual math. So then this is the trickiest part we're going to have to talk about is parentheses. So parentheses are outside of part of the molecule, and they will have their own little subscript. So what you do is you take the subscript that is outside the parentheses, and you multiply it by the one inside the parentheses. So you multiply the subscript that is outside the parentheses by the number of atoms that are inside the parentheses. So let's draw this one too. So I have lead will make yellow, and we'll make nitrogen green, and oxygen blue. Okay? So if I want to draw this, I'm looking at my lead right here. I have no subscripts, so it's going to have just one atom. For my nitrogen, again, I have no subscripts, so I'm going to draw one atom there. And for my oxygen, I have 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want to draw my picture and I want to show what this 2 does to it, this 2 outside the parentheses is going to affect everything inside the parentheses. So it's going to affect my NO3. So on my picture, I can draw, still connecting it because they're all the same particle, draw another NO3. And now I can count up my elements. So I have 1 lead, which if I look up here again, I only didn't have a subscript, so I have 1 lead. I have 1, 2 nitrogens, which if I look here, 1 times 2 is 2. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 oxygens. And if I look here, I have 3 oxygens times 2 is 6. So let's look at some more examples of these and try out some of the problems. All right, so here I have lithium, sulfur, and oxygen in my Li2SO4. So we'll assign them some colors. And we'll start drawing some pictures for the first couple. So Li2 means I'm going to have 2 lithium dots. S has no subscript, so I'm just going to have 1. And oxygen, there are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I count them up, I have 2 lithiums, 1 sulfur, 4 oxygens. And if I wanted to just look at my formula and do the math, I would see the same thing. I have 2 lithiums, 1 sulfur, and 4 oxygens. That one was pretty straightforward. If I look at problem number 2, now I have some coefficients. So I always try to figure out what's here first and then just multiply it by 3. So for barium, I don't have any subscripts. I have 1 barium. For chlorine, I have a subscript of 2. So I have 2 chlorines. Now I can go back and look at where I had my 3 here. So my barium is going to be 1 times 3. My chlorine is going to be 2 times 3. And if I wanted to do it with my pictures again, I would just draw 3 of the same molecule. So we end up with 1 times 3 is 1, 2, 3. 1 times 3 is 3 barium. Chlorine, 2 times 3 is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chlorine. If I want to try to do it without drawing the pictures, we can just do the math. And we can do the same thing. We can just do the molecule for now, and then multiply it by the coefficient if that's what you prefer. So silver, Ag, no subscript, so that's just 1. Nitrogen, N, no subscript, so that's just 1. O3, oxygen, is 3. Now I'm going to take all of those numbers and multiply them by my coefficient of 4. So I actually end up with 4 silvers, 4 nitrogens, and 12 oxygens in this molecule. For number 4, I have some parentheses now. So I want to go back and draw a picture for this one since it's the first parentheses one that we've done. So lead. Pb, I have no subscript. I have just 1. O, I have no subscript here. So I'm going to put 1 oxygen. And hydrogen, I have no subscript here. I'm going to put 1 hydrogen. But if I go back and look at this, I had a 2 outside my parentheses, and that 2 goes with everything inside my parentheses. So it goes with my oxygen and my hydrogen. So I'm going to draw 1 more oxygen and 1 more hydrogen. So now if I look here, I have 1, 2 oxygens, and I have 1, 2 hydrogens. If I wanted to do that without my pictures and just do it with the math, I could do the same thing. So lead, I have 1. Oxygen, I have 1 inside the parentheses times 2 outside the parentheses, which would give me 2. Hydrogen, I have 1 inside the parentheses times 2 outside the parentheses, and that will give me 2. This would be a good time for you to pause the video and try out number 5 on your own before you listen to me go over it. All right, so Na for sodium, I have 1. Carbon, I have no subscripts here, and I have a 2 outside of here. Hold on 1 second, Tommy needs me. What's up?
Can you tell me where my Beyblades are?
Not right this minute,
I
okay?
took them out of the box.
Not right this minute. Sorry about that. So carbon, I have no subscripts here, so I have 1, and I have a 2 out here. So 1 times 2. If I wanted to draw my picture, I would have 1 carbon inside my parentheses, and I would have 2 sets of parentheses. Oxygens, I have 3 here, times my subscript on the outside of the parentheses. So I would have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if I do my math, the sodium was just 1, carbon, whoops, 1 times 2 is 2, and oxygen 3 times 2 is 6. Now this one's got an extra step that we haven't seen before. So for this one, I have my carbon. I have 1 carbon here and 1 carbon here. I want to draw this one out just so that we can see it visually. So I have a carbon, and so that's that one. I'm going to come back and do the other one in a second. I'm going to do my hydrogens next. So hydrogens, I have 3. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to do this carbon, 1, and my oxygens, I have 2. 1, 2. So I can go through and I can count my picture. I have 1, 2 carbons. I have 1, 2, 3 hydrogens, and I have 2 oxygens. But if I didn't want to draw a picture and I wanted to figure out how many carbons I have, I could look at it and I could see here, I have 1 here, and I have 1 here. I'm going to add them together to get my 2. All right, number 7. Once you take a break, try it out, and just restart the video when you're ready to go over it. So for my iron, Fe, I have 3. Whoops. And then inside my parentheses, I have P, phosphorus, with no subscript. So that's 1 for now. And I have O4, oxygen. I have 4 for now. But let's go back and add this parentheses around the oxygen and the phosphorus. So 1, 2, 3, 4 more oxygen and 1 more phosphorus. So phosphorus would be 1 times 2. If I counted it up, I would have 2. Oxygen is 4 times 2, and that would give me 8. Same thing, try out problem number 8 and then restart the video. So I want to try one of these ones that has a coefficient without trying to draw it to see if we can do it with just the math. So here I have magnesium, and I have 2, times my coefficient, which is 6, and that would give me 12 magnesium. here I have nitrogen, I have 3. Again, times my 6, and that would give me 18 altogether. Try number 9 on your own and then restart the video. So nitrogen, I have no subscript here, so that's going to be 1, but it's inside a parentheses with a subscript of 3, so it's going to be 1 times 3, and that'll give me 3 altogether. Hydrogen, I have 4 times my 3 outside the parentheses, and that would give me 12 altogether. Phosphorus has nothing, so that's just 1. And oxygen, I have 4. There's no other subscripts, no coefficients, so that's just 4. And last but not least, try out this one and then we'll go over it together. So aluminum, I have 2. Nothing else going on with that, so that's just a plain old 2. Sulfur, I have no subscript here, so that's 1, but I do have it inside parentheses with a subscript of 3, so I multiply that and I get 3. Oxygen, I have 4 inside my parentheses and I have 3 outside my parentheses, so that gives me 12 altogether. All right, I hope that this helps you understand how we count up atoms, and if you have any questions, just reach out.